minority in parliament still believe that there should be consensus. Other than that, there is no way that e-levy will be passed. Tonight, we want to look at what we are having. Some say, well, it is because of the hung parliament. Some say, well, MPP should have done their homework well, so to avoid these things happening. But I want to ask you, are you happy that for once we have a hung parliament, and what it means is that at first it was majority will carry the day, whether it is right or wrong, so far as they have the numbers. They'll be able to use those numbers to build their way through. Now, as we speak, it is not the same. And for the intervention of the independent candidate, who obviously is an MPP person, I'm sure that MPP will be crying by now. Now, we need to pass the E-levy according to government. Minority says otherwise. Mahama Ayariga says that after their entrant position, they decided to concede and accept 1% if government would also come into that understanding that government must reduce it from 1.75 to 1%. However, Mahama Ayariga says when leadership of the other side, that is the NDC, met government, government was hesitant. Government was not ready to budge. Government was still on its stand, and government said the best thing they could do in terms of reduction would only be at 1.5% and not the 1% that is being proposed by the minority. Anyway, we want to understand, we want to discuss it, and we want to really delve into this matter properly and see what is happening in Parliament and whether it is good for our governance and how should they build a consensus. Remember, during the MPP's delegate conference recently, the president made a statement to suggest that they have the majority side, and the president was cocksure that definitely they were going to approve the e-levy. It couldn't materialize. As we speak, the e-levy is on hold, but the other subject continues. Tonight on Decision Point, I want to speak to the co-founder of CDDC, of John Adekunkwofo Foundation, but also somebody who has written books on governance and democracy. And he's also a co-founder of CDD. Professor Bafo Ajimendua is on the line. Professor, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us on Decision Point.
Good evening, my good brother. It's a pleasure to be with you on your program.
Thank you. Merry Christmas in advance.
Oh, same to you. Same to you. Thanks.
Prof, the last time we did a face-to-face in the studio, obviously we were talking about Ike Champon and the policies that he stood for.
Yeah.
Now, after several years, 2021, we are experiencing for the first time a parliament that decided to announce their presence on the eve of 6th of January, fighting each other, and then they apologize. And then recently, it happened, they apologized when the Speaker of Parliament returned from his sick leave. And just yesterday, when Parliament needed to rise, there was a need for them to approve the e-levy. And I'm sure that you've monitored proceedings and what happened. We want to understand, why is this happening? And in terms of democracy, how would you describe it based on your experience?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, you mentioned what happened on the 6th of January. And that, for me, was the precursor for things that have happened subsequently. See, the first time in our republic, we have what we call a hung parliament, where there's equal division of power between the two contending political parties in Parliament. In terms of majority and minority, technically there's nothing like that because each side got 137 seats. That is NDC and the NPP. The only one that makes the difference is the one that the NPP itself rejected as a candidate, with the president going to Formina to tell the people publicly on television that if that guy won, he could not work with him. Now, this gentleman happens to be the one to make the difference in the parliament. He went as an independent, but has declared that he allies himself with the NPP. So in that respect, NPP may have 138 versus the 137 that the NDC has. But technically speaking, it's a hung parliament. That brings a whole different ballgame, completely different dynamics of parliamentary work. But it seems to me that the NPP that is in power does not seem to recognize this new change in our parliamentary politics. And therefore, they have not appeared to have adapted strategies to meet this new situation. So what happened and what has been happening since the 6th of January certainly is a very contentious parliament. And because of the politics of exclusion that we have, what we call the winner takes all, it's always incumbent upon the opposition to do as much as it could to weaken the sitting government so that it can win the next election. It's been the same since the beginning of the republic. By the way, conflicts of this nature are normal in democracy. Democratic politics are inherently conflictual because we have what we call competing ideas in the open marketplace of ideas. So that's not surprising. But what is strange at the moment is the resort to violence by the parliamentarians. Look, we have had heated debates in our parliament, even beginning with the Nkrumah's parliament, when we were even one party in the 60s. Okay? So it was under Buzia, so it was under Liman. Liman even once suffered a setback when his budget was thrown out by parliamentarians, including his own party members. So conflicts of this nature are really not strange to democratic politics. But what is strange and what is threatening our democracy is the penchant of this Eighth Republic parliamentarians to resort to violence. Now, why is it violent? I personally don't have the answer to that. Maybe in the course of the conversation, we can find some theories to explain that.
Prof, I know my little understanding in terms of principle of negotiation, it's about compromise.
Yes.
Do you get the sense that perhaps a party is not ready to compromise?
You see, the essence of democratic governance are the key principles of compromises and consensus building. And this is exactly what Otumfuo Asante said recently at a function in Kumasi, where his gold coins were outdoored. But of course, unfortunately, some people in some political parties misread him and gave a very, what I would call, unnecessary response to that. And in fact, when Biden returned from Dubai to preside, in his apology to the nation on behalf of Parliament, he did repeat exactly what Otumfuo had said, which was that we should look at building consensus and compromises, and that legislatures do not make policies, executives make policies And of course, if you are not happy with it, all you do is to wait. In 4 years, the good people of the country will make their own decision in the elections. And that is precisely what should drive democracy. So whenever anybody thinks that they can arrogate to themselves the right to push certain policies contradicting the role of the executive, then you are bound to have a problem. It doesn't mean that the legislature should not do its what you call supervision work in terms of checkmating the executive, exercising the oversight role. No, not at all. But exercising oversight role does not include forcing what you think should be the right policy for the nation. Otherwise, what could be the difference between an elected government and others, say the legislature, the executive, and citizens? Ultimately, the legislature represents the people, and the people who have the sovereignty are those who finally decide who goes into the executive and who does not. You see, so these are clear things. But I think for some strange reasons, maybe for the first time we are experiencing this kind of hung parliament, the parliamentarians on both sides have not been able to adjust themselves to the responsibilities that are bestowed upon them for being in a hung parliament. You see, that, for me, is a problem. So, yes, you're right. The key principles of compromising and consensus building seem to have lost to these parties in parliament. And that is sad. It may reflect some kind of weakness in the leadership of parliament as an institution. And when I say leadership, you know what I mean. It's not just the NPP, NDC, but the leadership comprises both parties, and of course, headed by the Speaker. I think something has broken in the leadership makeup of the current parliament, their inability to adjust to the current reality of having a young parliament.
All right. So, listening to Mahama Ayariga, he made it clear that their initial stance of saying no to E-levy was quite, they made it a bit flexible. And it was then hurriedly put forward in the public domain by the leader, that's Haruna Idrusu.
Yes.
And that was the aftermath of certain negotiations. So they had wanted a 1% approval instead of the 1.7%. They met government and leadership, but government insisted on their position. In conflict management, I know that there is a position and there is an interest. I'm sure that the interest is to gather revenue for developmental agenda, and I'm sure that that's a good thing. But why do you think, based on your experience, that for once we have certain people, including Ghanaians, certain section of Ghanaians, saying no to this levy, which obviously it is not for the consumption of government, but rather for the consumption of citizens and for infrastructure development that every time we are pushing government to do for us. So why should the issue of taxation becomes a problem in a country that needs money for developmental agenda?
Very good question. Very good question. Every country thrives on taxation. When we sit here and happily receive aid assistance from America, Britain, Denmark, wherever, Japan, we forget that these monies are coming from the taxpayers of these countries. Of course, these countries historically have accumulated wealth at our own expense, at the expense of Africa. That's historical, we know that. But we cannot forget the fact that the citizens of this country pay taxes And as a result, their governments are able to extend helping hands to countries like Ghana. But we also know that taxation is something that nobody welcomes easily. Even in the advanced countries, rich people tend to avoid taxes. If you know what Donald Trump is going through, the possibility of he being sent to court for evading taxes, you can understand. That even so-called millionaires and billionaires at times want to avoid taxes, you see. So why are Ghanaians not happy with this? I tend to think that in our case, people, for some reasons, are disappointed, not just with Akufo-Addo's government, but with the performance of our recent government in the Fourth Republic. Somebody may want to isolate this or the other government, but generally speaking, Ghanaians have not been impressed because a government comes in and they create the impression that all the roads in the country have been fixed. Then the government changes. Then we realize that not every road has been fixed. So the new government promises, I'm going to fix all your roads. Despite the fact that not all roads in Ghana can be fixed in 4 years or 8 years or 20 years. Even today, as I speak to you, there are certain rural roads in America that are not paved. It's not possible. That doesn't happen anywhere. But politicians create impressions as if they are magicians to create all kinds of things they are incapable of creating. So in the long run, Ghanaians have realized that even the little taxes they pay, they don't see the benefits. Okay? Then, of course, is these same politicians who also tell us that this is a rich country. We sit on gold. We sit on diamond. Blah, 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 blah. So there's no need for us even to borrow. Then they come to power and they turn around and borrow more than previous governments. And then the gold that we sit on that they told us they are going to, they still allow the old system of the exploitative, extractive arrangements to continue, you see. So why Ghanaians are not happy, one, is that generally nobody is happy paying taxes. And the anger against taxation becomes greater when there's a popular perception that their tax monies are not being prudently utilized to the advantage, you see. Then on top of that, when we say we are poor and they see the opulence in public circles, okay, like governments present budgets looking for more revenue, but they never tell us the expenditure side, why they are not reducing the expenditure. They rather come with increased expenditures. You see what I'm saying? And that's the problem. If we are in a tight, belt-tightening move, then we should see this across board. So if you see public officials, and that's not just politicians, by the way, we always make the mistake to think it's only politicians that are sacking the country. You take time to study the civil service, state institutions, public universities, all state institutions, and see the level of expenditure, frivolous one, by these top management and other officials. It's all part of the problem. So as we create more districts, we create more regions, we create more state agencies, it means what? We are expanding the consumption base of the state, not the productive base of the state. This is what has been going on over the years and accumulating over the years to the extent that today, if those in government insist that without the E-levy, the economy will collapse, you have to understand that they are telling the truth that our economy is broke. And therefore, we need this as a rescue mechanism. Otherwise, they may be compelled to go back to the World Bank for I don't know for what, you know. So, and that's what I don't think our government wants to do, and nobody wants the government to do that. So in a way, the E-levy, as I see it, is a rescue measure to help our economy come back a little bit to some kind of stability,
right,
and also to enable government to provide the facilities that most of us want, the roads, the schools, and the others.
all right.
So in that respect, the taxation through E-levy, which seems to be perhaps somebody says lazy man's way of making taxes, but no, it will be an effective way if we succeed with that. But I think the government should impress the population that they themselves are aware of the challenges, and therefore they are going to be mindful of expenditure and seek to reduce the numerous allowances and money that go through drain. Just as last week we heard a whole parliamentary board decided to go to Dubai to hold a meeting or training. Is that what a poor country does? Is that what a poor? No. And there are so many such instances all around us. So it's not the government, it's not a Kufuado and his cabinet or cabinet. It's across board. Our whole system has been built on entitlement from state officials, public officials, to just consume and produce almost nothing in return.
All right. So, Prof, respectfully, your colleague and co-founder of CDD, Professor Buadi Jima, recently summed up our democracy, and I want to quote that the fact remains that 25 years down the line, Ghana remains a highly flawed democracy. It is a democracy which is increasingly declining in quality, whose dividends, institutions, and processes are increasingly captured by a few elites, mainly politicians, their party supporters, presidents, family, and friends and cronies, bureaucrats, and well-placed businessmen and women, private sector operations, and by some media leaders and CSO leaders. End of quotes. So, based on this, how can we take away these dangerous negative and charter a more prudent and positive path?
That's a very interesting quotation from my good friend. He's on target. And I think in many ways, I've alluded to that. When I talk of not just politicians, but the bureaucrats, and I was mentioning state agencies and all, these are the mid to upper level public officials who all enjoy these benefits. And you know, the sad part is that majority of Ghanaians who work day and night and sweat day and night, it is the work we do that services the opulence lifestyle of these people. We have a concept we call state capture. The state has been captured by this group identified by Imabodi in the quotation that you just gave. But it may sound theoretical. For political scientists, we start thinking theoretically, but in practical terms, it can be demonstrated in empirical terms, you see. So what we are seeing, and if you're asking me, is it possible for us to reverse it? It is a tough, and I've reflected over that. It is possible if even within the two-party system, a leader of one of the parties can emerge to capture the imagination of the people with a new vision, a new perspective on national development. Not this old, same old, if you elect me, I'll build roads for you. If you elect me, I'll put airports. Those are not vision. Those are entrenching existing systems. So we have to have a leader who decides that, look, the present system we have is suffocating. The present system we have is not productive. We are building an economy that is more consumptive than productive. And therefore, we need to change. If such a leader emerges, then I can see the way forward.
All right.
There seems to me these two parties mutually benefit from the existing system, and I cannot trust any of these parties in the immediate future to do what I'm suggesting.
Interesting. So finally, how do we, the majority, how do we owe this democracy? How do we experience the tangibles and the intangibles in development? Because the sovereignty resides in us, but it appears once we vote for our parliamentarians, there's something they call majority whip. So there is somebody who must whip them in line. So whether Ghanaians are saying, no, hold on to the E-levy, listening to us, it may collapse certain businesses. So far as a government is ready to push that agenda, whether citizens cry foul or not, they will push it through. How do we position ourselves strategically in such a way that whatever we will say, indeed, is what they will do?
Well, it's very difficult for any government to do exactly what people want it to do. You know why? Because in government, you see things in different perspectives. You remember one of our most honest presidents, former President Kufuor, within few months of becoming president at a press conference, he was honest enough to tell the Ghanaians that, look, when I was not president, I didn't know about what I do now. You see, he was honest to admit. But that is just by the way. The real issue is that when you're in government, there are so many forces working against you, not you as an individual, but your country. You begin to see the international forces at play. You begin to see how your debt burden is weighing on you, and so many other things. Citizens don't know that. So it is not always the case that a government should listen to what the citizens say. Leadership requires that, sure, you listen. And the same leadership also requires you to educate your citizens to understand why, despite the popular demand for ABC, why you think it's in the national interest to do CD but not AB. That is what seems to be lacking. Because truly, as I see it, if the E-levy thing had been presented in a more effective way in communication terms, probably, if not all the public, a major part of the public will understand it. You see, when a nation is facing severe challenges, economic challenges, as I believe we are facing now, then it becomes important for government to level with the people. You explain it, and people will understand. Even if they don't agree, they can have some appreciation for the challenges and therefore kind of grudgingly go along with you. And of course, at the end of your 10-year election time, if you are so displeased with what you have done, then they would exercise their right to take you out and put somebody else in. That's what democracy is all about. So I think it's important that public education, public engagement, and beyond that, in a democracy, engaging mutually with all your stakeholders, and particularly your opponents. Here, I don't seem to see so much of engagement between the two parties. I know they are at each other's throat all the time, but that's the public part. There must be a private part where the executive can engage the opposition. You know, in the U.S., when Biden wants a bill passed and having problems, at times from his own party, the Republicans, at times he drives his own car to the Congress to meet the parliamentary leadership. At times he invites them to the White House overseas to discuss matters. Democracy thrives on engagement, a consulting, through which you can achieve consensus and compromise. that is what we are lacking in our leadership in the country today.
Prof, thank you very much. We appreciate your time tonight.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Professor Bafo Ajimendua is the CEO of Kufuor Foundation, co-founder of CDD, talking about the need for proper negotiation. I'm going to activate the lines very soon, so you tell me what your decision will be regarding what is happening in Parliament. But first, we'll listen to our editorial.
Once again yesterday, Ghanaians witnessed a brawl in Parliament where we saw our honorable parliamentarians trading blows and exchange punches with each other. Well, it is not surprising anymore because we can all recall that we started this year on a violence note where we had our parliamentarians engage in a fighting spree which ended up having the military to calm them. And unfortunately, we are ending the year with another round of violence from our honorables. The 6th and 7th January parliamentary violence was when they had to vote to elect the Speaker of the 8th Parliament in the 4th Republic. And now the end of year fracas is as a result of the electronic transaction levy, known as the E-levy, which is gradually becoming a household name. Although the E-levy bill has been widely rejected by Ghanaians, making it unpopular, the majority in Parliament is doing its best to pass the bill to further burden the already burdened ordinary Ghanaian, while the minority in Parliament is trying to score political points by proving to Ghanaians that they care about the citizenry by preventing the bill from being approved. But before I talk about our honorables' conduct in Parliament, Ghanaians have been asking and will continue to ask, why is it that suddenly the E-levy is our messiah out of our economic miseries? Now, suddenly, the majority is claiming that E-levy is our only way out of excessive borrowing. The Agric Minister says the E-levy will support planting for food and jobs. Finance Minister claims it will solve the unemployment situation by creating 11 million jobs. Now, I want to ask the majority again, why are they making it suspicious that E-levy is just another way of extorting from the ordinary Ghanaian, when there could have been other ways? Because lots of finance experts have explained that E-levy is one of the laziest ways the government can generate revenue. And now, because of the quest to impose an unpopular bill on Ghanaians, our elected members of parliament had to turn the honorable house into a boxing arena once again. However, truth to be told, unless there are proper channels by the leadership of parliament in solving some of these issues, I think we should expect more of these disagreements and misunderstandings. Now, this is because we have to remember that for the first time in the history of Ghana's democracy and politics, we have a hung parliament where there is no clear majority, and that is why some of these issues are popping up. Again, we have to remember that for the first time, we have a Speaker of Parliament from the opposition party, of which we expect not to be too political, but have the interest of the nation at heart. And as we are all witnessing, these are some of the effects of having a hung Parliament, and that is, it is going to be difficult for the government to have its way with passing some of its bills. Meanwhile, in all this, it is the ordinary Ghanaian that suffers the unbearable consequences. I mean, we are just in the first year of the hung Parliament, and our leaders are already making our country a subject of ridicule. The Speaker, who is the head of the legislative arm, yesterday apologized to Ghanaians for the conduct of the parliamentarians some days ago and promised that he was going to chart a path of transformation, decency and change. But he couldn't keep his promise and the worst happened. I think the Right Honourable Alban Bagbe needs to set up as the head of Parliament and together with the leadership of Parliament find ways of resolving some of these issues amicably without resorting to violence. Because hey, we have 3 more years of a hung Parliament ahead of us.
Fantastic editorial by Aaron Puma. Thank you. So the lines are active. You can call me and then we can talk. 03220 83596 03220 83597 and 03220 83598 03220 83596 83597 and 83598. I'm asking you your opinion about what is happening in Parliament. A good deal for us, hang Parliament. I have Kojo from Patase. Kojo, good evening. Please lower the volume of your set.
Yeah, good evening. How are you?
I'm fine.
In fact, your professor has said it all. Let's give thanks to him. Mr. host, how do you give an account of what you want to do whilst you yourself, you are not prepared to cut down your expenses? That is the problem. If they have reason to even come down a little, I mean from 1.75 to even 1%, you shall say the opposition will understand. But you still maintain that you want to hang on to the 1.75, but rather the telecoms should rather reduce theirs for you to stand on the 1.75. That is the majority. They are not reasonable enough. That's the whole problem.
All right, thank you, Kojo.
Yes.
We appreciate your time. Kwabna from Jinya say good evening.
Hello, Nana. Good evening.
Good evening, Kwabna. You're on air. Decision point.
Nana, you see, Irene has just captured my sentiment perfectly. What is happening is that this is the first time we are having a hung parliament. But unfortunately, the Americans are still used to the old system because they have never seen this before. And I was saying that I was happy with this hung parliament. The reason is that over the period, we have seen that minority has always had their say and the majority have had their way. It has always been like that. This evening when I was listening to Newsnight, Seamus Abos was saying that he's confessing that they, in minority, has never been consulted by the majority. And I'm surprised he's making that point. It's because they didn't need them at that time. Now you need them to compromise with you. How come that over the period you have counted so much money in the economy, all our resources, gold, timber, everything, you have counted it, and you have told us that Sika will mining the Sika, so it's a company.
All right.
So how come that now you come to power, and everything you are doing is just telling us that if you don't get E-levy, this country is going to crash.
All right. Thank you, Kwabna. We appreciate your time. Eric Asari Atonsu, good evening.
Good evening.
Decision point.
Yes, please. I want to contribute, and my contribution is that the majority, they are behaving like false brats. It's giving them a lot of money in the past. I mean, if you look at the level of borrowing over the last 4-5 years, it's unprecedented. Now, they have very little to show for the work, in terms of work or in terms of everything. Now, you're asking for more money, and you can see that clearly in the atmosphere. There is it's become toxic. People are not willing to give you money. What you need to do is engage. You don't try to bulldoze your way through.
All right.
As though the minority, they don't exist or they are not important. Those days are gone.
Okay.
This is literally a hang element. And so I think that is where the problem was. There was little or no engagement. And even if there was, it was as though, I mean, they thought, if you have a finance minister who said a few weeks ago that he was going to engage or consult, and then he goes on a radio station, he's being interviewed, and then he says that is why God gave us 137 plus 1. What is he trying to say?
All right. Thank you. Dave from Bushen. Dave.
Yeah, good evening, sir.
Please lower the sets for me.
Yes,
and
sir,
then
I've done that.
All right.
Good
Dave.
evening.
All right,
yes,
Dave. 30 seconds.
But I'm so much happy, and I appreciate the professor has done so much well in his analysis, and the editorial was fantastic. Now, when we have a president or a government before coming to power, you make Ghanaians understand that we have money. You make Ghanaians understand that we have money. Then you come and you're asking for more, borrowing for more, just like the professor said. The perception has already been created in our mind, planted in our mind that there is money. Now, you were taxing already. You introduced so many taxes. The money that you have brought in as taxes, what have you used them for? Have you accounted for them? Now, you have recently, there is this issues in the media. You have traveled, you've hired some aircraft, you traveled, and we are asking for accountability. How much you have spent on this? The National Security Minister or coordinator came to Parliament and says that these things should be treated as top security issues. You have used taxpayers' money to do these rounds. We are demanding for accountability. You are telling us that it should be treated as top secret. Now you're asking for more. How do we trust you for accounting for this thing in the near future?
All right.
Everybody is what? Talking against this. Why won't you listen to Ghanaians for once? Just listen to Ghanaians. Now they are portraying the whole thing as if the opposition party doesn't like the development of the nation.
Interesting,
Dave. But the government must listen.
Thank you very much. The government must listen. Daddy C from Asawase. Daddy, good evening.
Yeah, good evening, Nana.
This is Decision Point.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I congratulate you for the good work you are doing for our nation, and especially Ashanti region.
Thank you.
Nana, what happened yesterday at our parliament is a very, very big disgrace to our MPs and our democratic system in Ghana here. And I think a commission should set up to investigate the whole issue, and the court should be punished to serve a deterrent to others, because we can't sit on this country to allow our honorables to misbehave such a way like that in our parliament. It's a very, very big disgrace. So I think if the commission is set up to investigate and the culprits are apprehended and punished, it will serve a deterrent for others not to do such things again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Political thinker, good evening. Political thinker, good evening. Hello? Is that political thinker?
Yes.
Okay.
Nana, good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, I think tonight my next contribution is that this Ghana will bless, but people who are leading us is causing us problems. But I think people like you and me don't have to sit down for our well to run dry before we miss our water. Because the wolf is always by the law. So, in fact, the E-levy like this, the opposition and then the incumbent is, fighting on it. All is because we try to, and bring out something that we call right to information bill. So, like the true journalists like you, Nana Jampua, can you get access to assess every government institution, what's going on there?
I get your point.
So I think something needs to be done.
All right, thank you, political thinker.
We need you people to enter into government institutions and pull the strings.
All right, thank you.
So that
thank you. Nanaya Bushen, good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
All right, you're on air.
Anna, thank you. Let me just state my point. When I listened to the professor, what he said, we really need an E-levy to help the government to operate. And that's fact. So what I'm asking myself is, if you are in opposition and you get to know that this is the position of the government, we need the E-levy to survive. Why? So that they come to a compromise on something that is going to help the entire nation to survive. But at this moment, it's more to do with somebody is doing the bidding system after. And now, the opposition is saying we won't agree. Because if we frustrate you, next election, we are not going to, Ghanaians are not going to vote for you. The government says that we need it, and because of that, we have to push it. But whatever. And here we are, as a citizen, instead of us to demand from the parents, account for what nonsense we are doing on that place. We are here in Ghana arguing ourselves.
Either the government have to approve this or not. These people are really all of us in one spot.
Okay.
And if tomorrow IMF decides, if Ghana decides to go to IMF, and they put restrictions just as we actually encountered some years ago, you and I are going to suffer.
All right.
So let's teach these people to understand.
All right, Kwana, please make it snappy for us. 30 seconds.
All right, I think the government must be firm. The government must be firm and ensure that this E-levy thing goes through, because all along in the history of Ghana, we have always been going to these institutions, IMF and the World Bank and other places, and it has not helped us. This is the time that we have to bite the bullet. And to be honest with you, these minority MPs, all the developmental projects in the budget that are found in their constituencies, they have not disapproved of that. But the money that will be used to do it, they are throwing blows to reject it. Does it make sense? And they are saying that we must educate. The government must educate.
Okay.
Are the MPs not well educated about the importance of this E-levy? And they look at the way they are behaving. It is a deliberate attempt to ensure that the government is strangled. And I will plead with the media to also, if they cannot be at least neutral, look at the interest of the nation, because there is no way we can have development without taxation and other stuff. It is obvious and it is clear that the world is suffering after COVID. Every nation is going through stress. So if this is the way we can wriggle our way out of it, I don't see how it can be seen as so evil.
Okay. Kwabena, thank you. I'm sorry, my time is up, so I would. But I appreciate your point. You are making a case where media must support the government, but we just create a platform for people to speak, and we go by what citizens say. Thank you, Eugene Osei-Tutu, producer, also the executive producer, DJ Puzo, Franklin Reku Brobe, and Irene Puma. Thank you. Social media by Kate Ado and also Joel. My name is Nana Jantua. This has been Decision Point. Remember, on Thursday, page 995, we'll be on with Patricia Bonsu. The Hook is up next. Good evening.